In the Middle East, we have often heard about sectarian violence between the Sunnis and the Shiites. What is going on? And is this conflict new or old? Watch on to find out. Hi, I'm Ryan F. Gassian, and today we're going to look at the origins of the conflict between the Sunnis and the Shiites in the Middle East. While this schism goes back 14 centuries, the conflicts raging across the region are relatively new. To understand why, we need to learn about negative secularism. Negative secularism is when religious freedom is being suppressed in the name of secular values. A great example of this was when the Shah ruled Iran in the 1970s. He outlawed most forms of public display of religious expression, not to mention beards. The people didn't take too kindly to what the Shah was doing, so they sided with the Ayatollahs. They were believers in political Islam, that society and state should be ruled by Islamic laws. After they overthrew the Shah in 1979, they went about exporting their brand of political Islam to the rest of the Muslim world. Suffice to say, this made the royals in Saudi Arabia very uneasy. They had a good thing going. For decades, they had grown incredibly wealthy through their control of their nation and its vast resources of oil. Now the Iranians were threatening all that by encouraging the people to do to them what they did to the Shah. It didn't help that the Saudis were Sunnis and that the Iranians were Shiite, but it was this idea of political Islam that really got under the Saudis' britches. They helped finance Saddam Hussein's war with Iran in the 1980s. 1 million people died, and when the Americans invaded Iraq in 2003, the Saudis supported the Shia insurgents rather than let Iran gain influence over the Iraq's democratic Shiite majority government. Now, don't get me wrong, the Iranians are no saints. Iran today is just as repressive as it was under the Shah, and they do support terrorist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. But have you met the Saudis? The Saudis behead people in the streets for crime as trivial as witchcraft and drug smuggling, and have deliberately bombed hospitals in Yemen. They support terrorist groups around the world, and some within the Saudi government are believed to have played a role in 9/11. Even if that turns out not to be the case, we know for a fact that 15 of the 19 hijackers were Saudis. I would hardly call them our friends. More like our drug dealers, and the drug they supply is called petroleum. The civil war in Syria is a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran, with the Iranians backing the Assad regime while the Saudis support the rebels. The reverse is true in Yemen, with the Saudis backing the government there and the Iranians aiding the Houthi rebels. Still, in the end, this sectarian feud is really about geopolitics. The Saudis had no problem with the Iranians when the Shah was in power. Their issue arose when the Ayatollahs took over and started exporting their ideals of political Islam beyond their borders, which threatened the Saudis' homogeny over their people and the rest of the Middle East. Things won't change until we Westerners stop backing one side or the other. Both have brought untold death and destruction to the Middle East, and we should demand that they end this pointless feud. At the very least, by taking a neutral stance, we won't be making the situation any worse. Thank you for listening to the second video in my Islamist series. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button below and subscribe. And don't forget to share using the share button. And in the immortal words of Mr. Spock, live long and prosper.